Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Mapocolops Game Awards. I'm so happy to have you here with me tonight, where last year was very spontaneous. It was very short notice. I sat in a chair, I rambled for an hour and a half talking about the games we played on the channel, and while that was a difficult list to put together, this year even more challenging. Honestly, I have been tossing and turning over the games that I played on the channel this year at which games deserve to win, which games deserve to be nominated, because this year was just absolutely incredible. It was filled with amazing games, both old and new. This game list that I have here, it's just overwhelming. And I didn't even get to play most of the games that released in 2023. So, there's no Baldur's Gate 3 here tonight, as much as that is everybody's golden child. That is a game that seems to cradle you, take you to the gates of heaven, and deliver you to a paradise that we can only dream of. A lot of people's game of the decade, even, I hear mentioned. Unfortunately, Baldur's Gate 3 could not be with us tonight because that is a game that did not make its way onto the channel, mostly just due to the fact that this was a massive Dragon Age year. That was the fantasy RPG that really just put its foot down and stayed on the channel for the past year. Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition. And I think that is quite impressive for a series to have a year-long stay on the channel, and I honestly think that adding another game into the mix, like Baldur's Gate 3, would have led to even more burnout than I have been facing over the past few months. Not necessarily a burnout on the channel itself, but just a general sort of life burnout. And the thing that keeps me going is my community. It's you. You allow me to wake up every day and share my passion with all of you. So trying to make sensible decisions and, satisfy my own wants and needs, especially on the channel. I don't want to overload myself more than I already do. I don't really allow myself much time to rest. And reflecting on the past year, I have probably gotten sick and ill more times than I ever have before, and something that I will be pushing myself to do in future is allowing myself more rest time and less burnout time. But all that aside, this is an award show to celebrate my year on the channel. It's to celebrate my community. It's to celebrate everyone that is here today, and also to celebrate the games. We're here to talk about games. It's a Game Awards show, which means there will be games and there will be awards given to those games and sufficient time to talk about those games. Who would have thought that you would want to be focusing on the games at a Game Awards show? I don't know. But I've rambled enough for the introduction. This is all unscripted. I just stand here, say what comes out, and hope for the best. So you're going to have to deal with the ADHD tangents that spill out as we go through this today. Please do note that obviously this is the opinion of one sole gamer who just plays video games to have fun and appreciates them as an art form and just really wants to, showcase so many great games. It's not sort of like this thing where I vote on games based on, it doesn't have XYZ, therefore it's out. It needs to have this to be good. It's just, did I have fun playing the game? Did it make me feel good? Those sort of natural and genuine sort of feelings going into choosing the games that I have put at the very, very top of the list. And it's tough. It's very, very tough. And it's different to tens of thousands of people voting for games. It's like, this has to be the winner, It's very, very different. There's not a sort of competition to valiantly make sure that a particular game wins. It's just like, I played a lot of games this year, played a lot of good games this year, and we're going to celebrate those, and if they made me feel good, they won. That really is it. So I've stressed about this so much when it just needs to be fun. So hopefully you enjoy yourselves. We're all here to have fun on the channel, and I'm very grateful for everyone's support this year as well. Also, I've got my angel child over here, Logan, who I also adopted in 2023 as well. So he was inducted into the community naturally. It's my beautiful son. So he will be there probably for the remainder of the show, sleeping in his precious little spot. So he's also part of this show and part of this community as well. But without further ado, all waffling aside, I think that we should get into our very first category of the show. So we do have some repeat categories from last year because they are kind of core staples that you would have. But we also have a few new ones and some ones that are a little bit more fun, just something to give some variety to the awards. So a very fitting opening category is Best Opening. And we have 6 nominees. Last year, we mostly had 5. This year, we are going for 6. Sometimes there will be a little bit less because there are some constraints, but 6 nominees for the most part because, like I said, they played some incredible games this year. It was really hard to leave some games out because a lot of the games are quite up there in terms of quality, though it's really hard to sort of throw them in. What makes my Game Awards very, very different to sort of official award shows is they obviously focus on only the games that came out in that year. I have to, sort of factor in games that have been played over decades and sometimes the best of those years brought in with the best of other years, and then they go head to head, and it's crazy. It's a ridiculous challenge to put these games that are just absolutely incredible with how they've been made with some other absolute behemoths of a game and just go, which one wins? It really just comes down to how it made me feel. Was it fun? That sort of thing. You don't want to think too hard. You don't want to make it like statistics of does this game have X, Y, and Z to make it good. It's really just like, how much fun did I have playing it? How enjoyable was it? How did it make me feel? Did it sit with me afterwards, or did I forget about it? It's that sort of, how much of an impact did the game have, really? So when we talk about our first category, and when we're talking about impact, we're going with best opening. How did the game start? How did the game throw you in? Did it hook you from the beginning? Was it a slow burn? What sort of approach did the game take? Was it a sequel, so it needed to carry off from something before? Or was it a brand new game that really needed to hook you in with something cool? So we have a variety here with 6 nominees: Soul Reaver 2, Hollow Knight, Dragon Age Origins, Jedi Survivor, Spider-Man 2, and Inscription. Which one had the greatest impact on me personally? I do want to give it to Dragon Age Origins, simply because of the fact that that game doesn't just have one opening. It has multiple openings. That game has you starting off with different origins. You can be a dwarf, you can be a human, you can be an elf, and it doesn't just stop there, because you can also vary your character's background, so you can have different dwarven origins, different elven origins, so on and so forth. And they play very differently. And obviously they will converge, and then the main story and narrative will go off and do its thing. But the way that Dragon Age Origins allows you so much freedom to just make a character, have an origin that feels like right for you, and have those choices echo throughout the series is exceptional. Dragon Age Origins takes the winning spot for best opening. Thank you for bearing with me as we nailed down the first category. Like I said, unscripted. We're just babbling, we're waffling, we're having fun. So the next category that follows along from best opening is, we'll just jump all the way to best ending. Which game had the most impactful ending? Which game sits with me the most as the credits roll, and I just sit there in awe, in silence, as I can't believe it. What have I just experienced as I sit down and I just let that one sink in? And we have, of course, another 6 nominees. And those nominees are Hollow Knight, and the ending that we're going for in terms of Hollow Knight is just the base game ending. So how did that game's story come to a close? Just the base game. Dragon Age Inquisition, Soul Reaver 2, Alan Wake 2, Signalis, and Final Fantasy 16. Those are the 6 nominees. Again, are there other games that I want to put there? Absolutely. It's a really tough list. So going into this 6, they all have some very beautiful endings, some very emotional endings, some very confusing endings. Games that sort of leave you with wanting more, ones that sort of come to a potentially satisfying conclusion, or a conclusion where you are still craving more nonetheless. It's really hard to bring a game to a close, especially if it's a standalone title. If there isn't a planned sequel, you've got to wrap that shit up all in one go. And then there are some games that are built to be a sequel, so that ending is leading into something else. And it's really hard to make your game not just be something that's created purely for the next part. You know, it has to serve an important purpose on its own. And tossing and turning on the best ending, I obviously do have a winner here, and we are going to be giving that one to Soul Reaver 2. Legacy of Kain is a series that started on the channel this year in 2023 after 3 years of it being recommended to me. They're like, hey, you're gonna love this game. You should play it. And it took 3 years. You know, sometimes game recommendations take their time because there's a lot of games to get to. But I am so happy that I did, because Soul Reaver 2 is very, very special. I think the series deserves so much more attention and mainstream love because it deserves to be in the mainstream. It deserves to have so much more success. It also deserves to continue and deserves remasters if necessary to really bring it to a more accessible place for most people. Because I know that going into playing an older game from the 90s or early 2000s is a real challenge for some people to get to, and I understand why. And it sucks because you have these games with exceptional storytelling, just really amazing experiences where the only limit for people, like that hurdle, is like the graphics or the gameplay. It's very old, so it's dated, that sort of thing, and I get it. But bringing those games into a more modern setting while retaining that story, 10 out of 10. I think more people really need to experience Legacy of Kain, and the ending of Soul Reaver 2 is just so incredible. That ending sequence is definitely going to be something that resonates and sits with me for a very, very long time. Upon finishing Soul Reaver 2, that game went straight to my top 3 video games of all time. Just not to, not to really overstate anything, but when I finished Soul Reaver 2, that is what happened. So Legacy of Kain, absolutely incredible series. I still have more of that to play. There are 2 more games in that series that I'm very, very excited to get to. Obviously, it's all just a matter of time. But Soul Reaver 2, best ending. Very, very good. So we've got 2 categories out of the way that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're actually going to go for a category which is best indie game, because indie games had a really amazing run on the channel this year, as well as the big new releases that came out this year that I got to play. There was a lot of beautiful smaller indie titles that were able to sort of come in on the side also. And it was really, really good stuff. The nominees that we have for Best Indie Game is Subnautica, Hollow Knight, Papers, Please, Return of the Obra Dinn, Signalis, and Inscription. And oh boy, is it challenging. It's like you look at this thing and then you look at some of the games that were only made by a few people and you kind of go, how? This game is a masterpiece. And I think indie games are really beautiful because I finish them and I go and do a bunch of research after, more so than bigger games, I think. Like I go and look through on like how this game was made and what inspired it, and looking up the sort of the concept art and the story properly and just really like absorbing it all. I think indie titles are really special at sitting, having a lovely place in our heart, I think, indie titles over a lot of the big games that sort of have this AAA experience. The game has to be massive, it has to be open world, and it has the graphics and all that kind of stuff. And an indie game is so refreshing because while I think there's so much more that indie games could be, I think those limits that indie games have do force them to think outside of the box and be very, very creative in their approach as well. And it's also nice to play a game where art direction is a big highlight, because it's not like an experience where they focus on top tier realistic graphics. It's one of those sort of experiences where you'll have like maybe hand-drawn animation or just a very beautiful sort of 2D backgrounds that are just very well realized, or just something that's even more bare bones in its graphical style, but the story just carries it all the way through. It's really hard to nail down what the best indie game is, but I feel like, and this is the thing, feeling is the big thing here. Which game made me feel the best? The best indie game for 2023 is Hollow Knight. And it's one of those ones where it kind of had to be the winner. Like that's almost sort of my feelings when I wrote the nominations. Is this was one of the first category where I wrote out the nominations with the winner in mind, because it was just a very, very sure thing for me. So I was like, okay, like Hollow Knight was the best indie game that I played. Not to throw any shade on the other games that I played at all, because Inscription, Signalis, Oberdin, Papers, Please, Subnautica, all of them really, really fun, really, really amazing games. It's just hard to stack them up next to each other and go, which one's the best? Hollow Knight just had so much going for it in every capacity, every sense of the word. Beautiful art style, beautiful music, beautiful character designs, combat, amazing. Just that was also my first Metroidvania experience as well, so I'm really excited to sort of dive into that genre a lot more. But Hollow Knight really takes the cake for me. It's incredible. It is, you know, to prevent repeating myself by saying incredible, amazing, beautiful, all of those things over and over again. I think a lot of people relate. I loved sort of the lonely nature of your character wandering through the desolate world, and the music to accompany that just felt so fitting every single time. The challenges that you faced, really getting through that combat and learning how to sort of improve your skills was very important. The amount of ways that you can do combat differently, whether you want to go for a more spellcaster approach or a more physical approach with the nail, all of the different characters that you can meet. I had so much fun with Hollow Knight. I would say that as a runner-up for best indie, I would have to give it to Inscription. I really would have to give it to Inscription. I do want to throw in a runner-up in this category, because I think they're very special. Like Inscription and Signalis are probably my two runner-ups for like pretty much the exact same reasons. Hollow Knight, Inscription, and Signalis have all of the same exceptional qualities to them that they're very, very close together. But Hollow Knight is my clear winner of best indie. Now, as I proceed to let my dog out, we're going to go to an ad break. There is a very important video that I have to share with you all from a treasured member of our community, and I'll let you see for yourself.
Were you searching for the deal of a lifetime? Well, you found it. A talented investigator like yourself deserves to play the mystery game of the decade, The Payne's Creek Killings. Created by indie game developer EQ Studios, The Payne's Creek Killings follows an investigative journalist exploring an isolated ghost town searching for clues as to what led to the tragic end of this sleepy little hamlet. It's challenging, it's atmospheric, it's moving, and it can be yours. How much? We'll solve the first mystery for you. You can have The Payne's Creek Killings for just $19.99 plus shipping and handling. That's right, $19.99. But if you call right now, we'll bop the shipping and handling and the tax. That's right, all you have to pay is $19.99, no strings attached. Not only that, but if you pinky promise to actually play it and not edge me, I'll buy it for you. And if that's not enough, we'll include an advanced screening of the highly anticipated BioShock 2 Episode 6 by Dex. You get all of this for just $19.99 or free. Now that's getting away with murder. Call now, please. Payne's Creek Killings is available on Steam. It's frequently on sale for $5. This has absolutely no affiliation with EQ Studios or reality. I'm not even sure what the point of life is anymore. Please seriously play this game. It's an incredible game that deserves your attention. Join the Mapocolops, Discord for a great community playing of shenanigans. Please call 1-2-3-4-5-6-7-8-9-0 today, please.
And welcome back. Thank you so much, Dex, for putting that one together for us. It really was just such a fun video to include in our showcase tonight. Don't you think so, Danny? There you go. Celebrity guest appearance. Surprise, everybody. We have Mr. DeVito, renowned video gamer, on stage with us tonight. Unfortunately, something that I forgot to take into account is Mr. DeVito here. He needs to be paid by the word, and we blew all of the budget flying him out here. So unfortunately, there are no lines tonight, but he did agree to stand here and look happy because, as we all know, Danny DeVito loves video games, and that is why he's here. We always want to make sure that the celebrities that show up on stage just have a knowledge and love and appreciation for video games, not just because their kids play them, because they actually love and appreciate video games. And that's who you want to give stage time to, right? The people that love video games, that care for video games, and the people that made those video games, Now, I am but a small, humble creator, so I am not able to fly out every single game dev studio in the world to come here and talk about their awards. But if I could, I would. We'd have a whole thing going. Because on a very real note, having game developers be able to share their experiences, talk about their win, thank the people necessary is very, very important. So hopefully the way that I talk about the video game winners in this show really allows that to come across. Obviously, the developers can't talk about their own games here in this show because it's just not feasible, but I want to really talk about the things that I love and give exceptional time to those games. Right, Danny? Exactly. And sacrificing time for people or segments that just don't serve that purpose to really push up video games and to just make it much more Hollywood. It just doesn't sit right with me. But let's focus on the games, right? So we're going to move into our very next category here. So after we had our first few categories, we're going to move into a genre. We're going to have a genre category, which is Best RPG, the best role-playing game on the channel, of which there were not many, because a particular series had a very large presence on the channel, and that sort of took the RPG title very, very clearly. So there are 5 nominees in our Best RPG category, which is Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition, Fallout, and Final Fantasy 16. Last year we spoke about RPGs and how it's quite a varied genre. There are sub-genres within the RPG name, so there will be many that will argue Final Fantasy 16 an RPG? No. To me it is. It's still in that Final Fantasy RPG genre. As much as the games can change and evolve over the years, it still fits underneath that category. It can also fit into like action adventure if you really want it to as well, but that's not a category in the show, so it's under the RPG title. Now, 3 Dragon Age games showing up in one category is not something you're going to see often. It's not a crazy thing where Dragon Age is everywhere. The Eternal Dragon Age Let's Play is over. As much as there is still more content to come from Dragon Age when I'm feeling up to it, that was a very long-running series on the channel. So Best RPG, having all 3 of those together, makes a lot of sense. And the winner of our Best RPG category is Dragon Age Origins. The very first one, the beginning. They really started out strong with something truly special with Dragon Age Origins. The way that game starts, the way the narrative takes you through that world, just exceptional. And in terms of role-playing from a gameplay perspective, I feel that it was done right. The other following Dragon Age titles Didn't really manage to capture that magic from the first game. Not to, take away from the things that they did do very, very well, because I think the whole entire series is great. It's very, very good. But there's something about the beginning, the origin of Dragon Age, if you will, that just really hit the correct marks. The game was fun to play. It was a joy to role play as my character, being able to create your own origin, go through, make so many unique decisions that now that we've completed the Dragon Age trilogy, you can see how even like small decisions really like ripple through all the way through the series. And I just loved the decisions made, how that game closed out, and how it continued to affect the next two games that came out in the series. So Dragon Age Origins is our best RPG of 2023. And now we move into the next category, which is another genre related one, best horror game. So RPG and horror really are the games that we played on the channel that had enough to make up a list of nominees. So moving into best horror game, we had Fatal Frame, Signalis, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Silent Hill Downpour, who's behind me? Oh, it's Logan. And Alan Wake 2. So a very good list, I think. And we had a couple around Halloween time, and then we had some earlier in the year. We started off the year strong with Silent Hill Downpour because that was the final one that we had to cross off our list, because we were highly anticipating the return of Silent Hill with the hit game Silent Hill Ascension. Moving on. Silent Hill Downpour. I enjoyed it for what it was. I really did quite like Silent Hill Downpour. I liked it more than the previous games I had played in the series post Team Silent. It had some redeeming qualities. It also had some silliness that people have come to expect from Silent Hill in their later years, sadly. But more recently, we also played Fatal Frame and Alan Wake 2 over the Halloween period and beyond. Fatal Frame, genuinely, really bone-rattling horror right there. But that's only because ghosts are my weakness. And they really managed to take that ghostly horror and just throw it right at you. Unapologetically so. Absolute harassment by Ghosts, the video game. But our winner going into this one has to be given to Signalis. That game is a treasure. It's honestly special. Signalis is mind-blowing. Had a lot of people recommending it and wanting it to be played, and I'm very, very glad that I did. It's right up my alley. That is my type of horror experience, almost across the board. And coming from an indie studio as well was great, because it's one that doesn't have this sort of tremendous focus on the graphical capabilities, but it can still manage to be really, really like immersive and scary with that in mind. It just has such a great art style, from the gameplay to the cutscenes, and the way that the story is handled was amazing. And it genuinely is one of those games, and this is what I was telling you about in the indie category, is I went and bought 3 books after finishing Signalis on the ones that inspired it, where it's The King in Yellow. I've bought the complete fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, even though there's only specific stories that have inspired Signalis. And there's also another one, which is The Midst of Life, which is very, very interesting as well. Those are books that I have purchased, yet to read because I've been very, very busy. But that is sort of the indie game effect, and Signalis definitely had that effect on me, where I needed to research immediately. I'm like, what inspired this game, and how can I get more of that, So it's really made me want to dig much deeper into that level of storytelling, and I really appreciate Signalis. And I also think it's a little bit of a hidden gem, in my opinion, because it didn't get a lot of attention on the channel, and I don't see it being spoken about enough. And I genuinely think more people should experience Signalis. So that is the winner for Best Horror Game of 2023 on the channel. Going up against some really big games as well. Resident Evil 4 Remake and Alan Wake 2 being two of the major releases this year. Incredible games, and an incredible remake with Resident Evil 4 as well. The way that they handled the original stuff and were able to bring a lot of it back and handle it differently. Like we had the Separate Ways DLC come out with Ada, and they were able to take those original parts of the game that were initially cut out and rework them in a better way. Separate Ways was just so much better in the remake than it was in the original. It's obviously still a horror, but it does signify when Resident Evil started moving in more of an action-oriented direction, I believe. So it's not necessarily a scary game. I would say that Fatal Frame is the scariest game on the list. So if we were going for best horror based on how much it scared me, I would say that Fatal Frame's sort of at the top there. But then I have to dock points off of it at the end because it became less of a scary game and more of a frustrating game towards the end, because the scares wear off and the gameplay becomes a little bit frustrating, and the harassment of the ghosts becomes more of a chore than a scare. But the way that Fatal Frame starts, terrifying stuff, genuinely, and the atmosphere, incredible. But overall, as a horror experience, I've got to give it to Signalis. I really do. So that brings our sort of genre-related categories to a close. But continuing on the narrative here, we did have Best Horror, so we should continue that, right? And we should have Best Silent Hill Game, I think, right? That's a fun category. What was the best Silent Hill game of 2023? Was it Silent Hill Downpour? Or was it Signalis? Or was it Alan Wake 2? Or was it even Resident Evil 4? Or was it Fatal Frame? It's just like literally the horror games of the year. Which one was the better Silent Hill game? And just a quick little winner here. It's Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 created a Silent Hill experience that was so wonderful. The dark place is really like that other world in a sense, where it's like the world that is, it's Silent Hill hasn't been the same for a very long time. And we have these games that are coming out like Signalis even. Silent Hill wishes it could be Signalis. It wishes it could be Alan Wake 2. And Downpour, while being a Silent Hill game, is not the best of its own series. It's not even the best of games that have been able to come out and really emulate that magic even. So best Silent Hill game is Alan Wake 2, but also Signalis will get that runner-up spot as well, because they really handle that sort of particular type of horror really well. And look, we're in a not so great position at the moment with Silent Hill. Ascension did come out and it is what it is. But we do still have some other games on the horizon by different developers that are being handled in a much different way. So I am still hopeful for the future of Silent Hill. I am highly anticipating Silent Hill F and Townfall. I think those are the two titles I'm anticipating the most, and I'm very, very excited for those to see what direction Silent Hill will be taken in. And then the Silent Hill 2 remake, I am cautiously optimistic over. I think I have sensible hesitation, like a lot of people do, but I'm also hoping that it is really, really amazing, because Silent Hill 2 is not only a very special game in general, but it's the game that allowed my channel to grow. It's a very interesting one in that sense, where in 2020, the coronavirus, that was coming in full swing, and we're all going home, and everything was very scary and depressing and isolating. And it was right in those early days where it was very uncertain. We were not sure what was going to happen. And I sat down and I decided to record Silent Hill 2 and share that on the channel. And it took off, really, really surprisingly so. It was very much caught me off guard. And Silent Hill 2 allowed me to pursue YouTube. It really is that genesis of the Mapocolops YouTube channel, because it allowed me to continue playing the rest of the Silent Hill games and then branching out to other games that I really wanted to check out. That I was like, hey, I hear this game's good. Let's play Metal Gear Solid. Let's play Resident Evil. The other games I hadn't played before, yada, yada, yada. Silent Hill 2 is a very special game for the channel. So I hope the remake is good, because it's going to be really interesting to play it on the channel after so many years in a remade capacity. So I'm very much looking forward to that. It's just, we're in a sad position with Silent Hill at the moment. But moving on, we will go into a proper category now. We're going to move into Best Voice Acting. Which game had the best voice cast performance consistently? So it's not nailing down one specific voice actor. It really is an across the board sort of situation here, as much as there is exceptional standout performers. I just wanted to sort of be a little more broad and just focus on the best voice acting as a whole. So the nominees for best voice acting is Soul Reaver 2, Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Return of the Obra Dinn, and Dragon Age Inquisition. And it's quite tough as well, because there's a lot of other games that are not in this list that I also think have very exceptional voice acting. And it's hard. Like I said, choosing the nominees, I'm tossing and turning. It's hard to really nail down a definitive list, and feelings change and opinions do develop over time. And it's kind of hard to, 1 week be like, I feel that it's this way. And then the other week I'm like, but I feel that it's this way. So we've landed on that for best voice acting. And I think all of those games are very, very impressive with multiple cast members. Some have more tremendous standouts than others. Like, I do want to state that Yuri Lowenthal's performance in Spider-Man 2 is probably the greatest thing, the greatest sort of performance in that game as a whole. There is such an emotional depth and range there that I feel is worthy of attention and mention. That Yuri Lowenthal just really knocks it out of the park with Spider-Man. He really understands and gets that character, that he's kind of almost moved into very, very close to the definitive Spider-Man Peter Parker voice for me. Unfortunately, as a whole voice cast, it doesn't really take that top spot. So we do want to give the best voice acting to Final Fantasy 16. And it was very, very close. It was very, very close to another game here. But Final Fantasy 16, I feel, just did an amazing job with its voice acting. And it was kind of unique in that Final Fantasy 16 took the English translation and the English voice cast very, very seriously. It was primarily developed for for the West, for the English-speaking audience, and it does show. The translation is impeccable. I think that Creative Business Unit 3 is kind of known for that. I think that the Final Fantasy XIV team as well, as far as I'm aware, do a very, very good job, and they're kind of fun and cheeky with their English translations as well. Like, they really understand that quite well, which when you compare it to the earlier days of Final Fantasy translation, it's very humorous as a result, because they had a lot of challenges, a lot of mistranslations, but the best voice acting, really got to hand it to Final Fantasy 16. I just think the main cast were incredible. Clive, my god, Ben Starr, just an absolute shining star of a voice actor for Clive. Really nailed it. Sid as well. Ralph Ineson as Sid is just such a great voice. So amazing. All of the villainous characters too, just too many to list. Just an amazing work all the way around. And it was very, very close to both Soul Reaver 2 and Return of the Obra Dinn. And Obra Dinn is kind of the standout one here, as like almost an out of left field choice. And I put it in here because Obra Dinn's voice acting is so integral to the gameplay experience that it deserves that sort of mention, as how important the voice acting needs to be for your inquisitive mind. Your little detective game here is you're trying to piece things together, who's who, and the voices play a very important part in identifying people. So the way that voice acting works in Obra Dinn, really, really exceptional. It does deserve its spot in the nominee list for voice acting. And Soul Reaver 2 as well really needs to be mentioned, because the way that lines are delivered, it is Shakespearean, really. Soul Reaver 2, just listening to that script, listening to the characters say their lines, honestly, it does something to my brain. Soul Reaver 2 was very, very much close to first place alongside Final Fantasy 16 here, that the winner did kind of fluctuate a little bit, where it was hard for me to really nail it down and choose where I wanted it to be. It did ultimately go with Final Fantasy 16, but you can tell that in Soul Reaver 2, these voice actors gave it 110% in really going through that narrative and reading through that script, just hanging off every word, I think. And then every single time a cutscene would finish and the characters had stopped talking in that game, I would just sit there and appreciate what I had just heard. Like, it was just amazing to just listen to. It was amazing. So Final Fantasy 16 is the winner of Best Voice Acting, but an exceptional list of nominees all around, because Alan Wake 2 had some amazing performances too, and I think Saga Anderson, that character, really, we got to see Melanie's performance really sort of highlight towards the end, which was kind of a little bit of a sad thing, because her performance was great, but it took a long time to get there. She was very much consistent and very much sort of like the same for like 90% of the game. And then you get to the end and I'm just like, very, very impressive performance right out at the end there, you know? And then of course we have James McCaffrey as Alex Casey, and he has passed away. May he rest in peace. Absolutely incredible voice work for so many years, and I have only come to be exposed to his work recently by picking up the Remedy games with Control, playing Trench, and then with Max Payne you get to experience like his voice work for Max, and then Alex Casey as well most recently. And I really, really have loved getting to know the characters that he has voiced, and it is so tremendously sad that he has passed, especially with the confusion that came out around that time and everybody was freaking out and going crazy. So tremendous amounts of respect to his voice work, and he did an incredible job, as is to be expected. Such an amazing voice, and I'm looking forward to hearing it throughout Max Payne 2 and I believe Max Payne 3. I'm not sure if the voice actor is the same, because it's a blind playthrough, so I can't predict that. Sometimes voice actors change as developers change. I believe it's the same. So I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing more of his voice, and it's going to be very bittersweet as we move into playing Max Payne 2 on the channel eventually. So Alan Wake 2 had some amazing voice work done. Matthew Peretta doing the voice work for Alan Wake, of course, has to be mentioned as well. A great voice cast all around. And then you've got Dragon Age Inquisition. I have to mention this one because I've mentioned every other game in the list. Dragon Age Inquisition has some exceptional work as well. I loved the voice of my female Inquisitor, which was also Samantha Trainer in Mass Effect 3. She really got to come into her own, being the main protagonist of this game, and that was very truly much felt. You've also obviously got Brian Bloom as Varric. I almost lost the name, as Varric because I'm waffling. Claudia Black comes back as Morrigan, and I'm not actually familiar with the name of the voice actor for Solus, but just so good, so very good. Just another exceptional cast all the way around. They just really nail it. So a great list of nominees for best voice acting, ultimately going to Final Fantasy XVI. And this was initially going to be a follow-up category that was going to hone in on just a particular voice actor for the performance, but it felt just like not really sort of worth going into when we wanted to just cover sort of voice acting as a whole, and it would sort of be reiterating more of the same, really, for if we wanted to hone in on a specific voice actor. But we are going to focus on the 2023 video game releases for this category, because it's an interesting one. This is best performance, and this is why I was saying, like, it almost was going to be performance in terms of a character, a voice actor performance, but this is a category that's actually how the game performed in terms of a technical level. Was it buggy? Was it glitchy? Was it a pretty tightly put together experience? That level of performance, a technical performance for the 2023 releases, because something that's kind of unfortunate about a lot of games that are coming out in recent years, and it's kind of getting worse and worse, is games are releasing in incomplete states, and it's been a thing for many, many years now where there's that mentality of we will fix it later, and they kind of rush it out the gate, whether it's due to the team rushing or executives and higher-ups pushing the game out the door and forcing them to cut things out and to make sacrifices, and developers wanting to avoid crunch as well, which is a very bad thing that they have to go through. They don't have to go through it. They unfortunately go through it. So it's quite tough that a lot of games that come out are just not up to a standard, unfortunately. There are things that should be focused on and refined before a game is released, because you have some very, very infamous sort of situations with games that come out and they're amazing games sort of underneath all of that, but then on the surface it's broken, and that's all that is going to sit with people. That first impression is so important, because it takes years and years and years to earn back player trust from releasing something broken when you had the opportunity to not release it in a broken state. And that sits with people. People years later will go, my trust was betrayed, this game was busted, they promised it wouldn't be, they advertised it as something else. And you can completely understand and empathize with people who feel really, really disappointed with games that come out that are just released as broken messes. Fortunately for me, the 2023 games that I played on the channel this year were not broken or absolutely busted or unplayable, but there were still issues. Which is very, very unfortunate, because you don't want that to happen, especially in a game that you're having so much fun in, and it's so enjoyable, but then there's just stuff that happens that really gets in the way. Something that's quite interesting about my channel is I seem to be a bit of a bug magnet. However, is I seemingly break games or experience glitches that nobody ever has, and I don't know if I'm cursed or what, but there's so many experiences in games that I've played where people have been like, I've never seen this bug or glitch in my life, and it happens all the time. I don't understand it. I'm just playing the game and it blows up in my face. But luckily for this list of nominees in terms of its performance, what I did tend to experience bug or glitch wise was actually quite common, unfortunately. So moving into best performance, which game ran the best out of the 2023 releases? We have Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, Resident Evil 4, Alan Wake 2, and Final Fantasy 16. So those are the games that released this year that we played on the channel to completion. And quite quickly, just to drop a winner out there, it's Final Fantasy 16. That game is fine-tuned. I didn't experience any bugs or any glitches or any performance issues that I can recall or think of throughout my whole experience with that game. Final Fantasy 16 was probably as close to being a perfect release of it released as intended, and here it is. Enjoy. And they were very, very proud of that fact. Now, I might have experienced maybe a bug or a glitch or something throughout the playthrough, because I don't want to just stay sorry, bud. Don't want to stand here with absolute certainty and go, I experienced no glitches whatsoever, but none that I can recall. I look back on that game and I feel like it was very, very smooth experience. I will happily stand corrected if I did experience some, but the reason it's a very, very clear winner is because every single other game in this category I can remember. The glitches, the bugs, the performance issues, unfortunately. Spider-Man 2, my character turned into a cube. I was Cube Man. It was weird. You've also just got sort of general character animation weirdness stuff being a little bit strange. Jedi Survivor was plagued with performance issues. It just was not great. The game was not ready to be released. It was weird. It was glitchy. People are still experiencing performance issues with that game, despite it's supposed to be in a much, much better state. I have a friend who's playing it at the moment that's just sending me their video of them falling through the floor and just having a bunch of other stuff happen. So very, very unfortunate. And then they released the news that they're working on a PS4 and an Xbox One port of the game, and it's like, priorities, maybe fix the current release instead of releasing on dated hardware and hoping for the best, but it is what it is. Resident Evil 4, I also had some issues. Not anything that was too crazy. There was, floor textures missing sometimes when I was walking through areas, things like that. But that was probably the second best running game. Didn't really have many bugs or glitches whatsoever. So Resident Evil 4 Remake was actually handled very, very well. So it's a very close second place. And Alan Wake 2, sadly, so sadly, had numerous bugs, glitches, and performance issues. Just things not working, audio cutting out, voice work out of sync, performance issues across the board, weird inventory UI glitches, just stuff that was bugged, very sadly, for Alan Wake 2 as well. But Final Fantasy 16, and then for a runner-up, Resident Evil 4 Remake, ran the best out of the 2023 releases. And that about brings that sort of segment to a close. And we can move into our next categories. We do have plenty more show and plenty more categories to go into. So I hope that you are feeling pretty nice about the show so far. It's been an interesting one to record. This is not something I have ever done before. So it's been a little bit of a mental challenge for me to go through and put this one together. So checking in. Hope you're having fun. Hope you're having a good time. Obviously, I'm not talking to you in real time. So I just hope that this works out for the best, and I'll be watching this with you all when it premieres live. So hopefully we're all having fun. We're going to move into the next category now, which we're going to start delving into some more specific gameplay things, some more specific game sections. What is the best this in a game? What's the best that in a game? And what better way to start than with best gameplay? This is a two-parter category here. So there is gameplay, and then the second category is also going to be best combat, because I feel that these two categories are worthy of separation, because there are games that just have gameplay that is so much fun, and maybe the combat not as much, or maybe it doesn't even have combat, and then games that focus on their combat is something to also appreciate. So this is a two-parter, so don't freak out. And so we move into the category for best gameplay. So our nominees are Hollow Knight, Metro Exodus, Fallout, Subnautica, Inscription, and Dishonored. A very beautiful list there. So much fun in all of those games. Particularly some that I want to highlight here. Subnautica is not a game that I play very often, like at all. Survival type games I've dabbled in very, very lightly, because I get hooked in on story and pulled in for that journey with some fun gameplay to accompany it. And luckily, Subnautica really did have some great lore and story to kind of push you along also, which kind of made it a bit more of a unique playthrough, I think. I don't know if maybe people were expecting the playthrough to go a particular way. It was because there's a lot to interact with in terms of like base building and resource gathering and so many different things to build and creatures to discover. And I kind of struggled with the game as well, because my approach is, for a Let's Play, I want to move along the story and keep episodes having a good, healthy amount of content. I had like a voice in my head that was sort of going, people are going to get bored if you don't push along, and you know, that was self-imposed, but it really was little bit challenging to play the game with that in mind, because usually quite used to the episodic story content. You probably can't hear that, but a thunderstorm is on the approach, so this is great. It really sets the atmosphere, the tone. You get the shiver down your spine when you hear the hear the thunder in the background. Cool. Merry Christmas weather is the thunderstorms. Lovely stuff. So anyway, survival games with Subnautica. Really, really cool. I had so much fun with the game. I loved engaging with it. And now my dog is making noises. I'm on edge now, guys. Jesus Christ. So, Subnautica, a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. The resource gathering, the base building was stuff I didn't really engage with like as much. I did enjoy making a base eventually, but I know that there were people that could just get absolutely lost just only doing that and then venturing out and doing stuff. But yeah, I really sort of did a story-focused Let's Play. So it was shorter than it could have been. I know that I probably could have spent way more time playing that game. It was just a struggle for me. It was a challenge to construct a Let's Play for it, and I didn't really have any experience with the survival genre on the channel before, so I didn't know what people really wanted or were expecting. So unique in that sense, but I do want to state I had a lot of fun playing it, and I would love to revisit, and I would also love to play Below Zero at some point when I have the time for it also, to experience more of it and maybe handle the game a little bit differently now that I've sort of have a bit more experience with it. So I'm looking forward to diving into some more of that eventually. And another one that I want to highlight here as well is Fallout, because this is the oldest game in this list of nominees from the late 90s. And as a Bethesda fan of the Fallout games growing up in my teens, I always wanted to go back and check out the originals. I didn't really have the means to do so. It took me until I was in my mid-20s before I actually got a proper PC to play on, and also I have a huge video game backlog as per my YouTube channel, because I spent a lot of time in my teens getting addicted to Destiny. So I sacrificed a lot of new games to play one particular game obsessively. So being able to go back and play these original Fallout games on the channel has been a blessing, and it has been so much fun, really. Just very surprising, the level of depth that was in that game. It caught me off guard. I really loved how immersive it was, even though it's like this isometric CRPG. I was very in the shoes of my character, in that dialogue, in combat. It was very enjoyable, very, very entertaining. And I loved Fallout 1 specifically having the sort of the keyword search where you could ask characters things. So they would mention a name or a location and you would ask them about it, and they would give you more information that you would miss otherwise because it's not in the set dialogue choices. That's amazing. And it was something that I looked at and I was immediately impressed by, and I wanted them to do more with that. I wanted them to develop that further, not just in Fallout, but in gaming in general. You know how cool it would be to just be talking with people and have a conversation. They mention something, you ask them about it, and then there's that sort of back and forth. It's one of those things that I think would be really beneficial for immersion and just sort of natural flowing dialogue in gameplay conversations. So Fallout 2 obviously would probably be in this category, but because it's a game in progress, it is exempt from this year's Game Awards in the same way that Dragon Age Origins was last year. Because having not finished the game yet, I don't have that fully formed, concrete opinion on placing it in spots. It's pretty clear with what I've played of Fallout 2 so far that it would be in this list because it is Fallout 1 but better. It is more enhanced as an experience. It's basically Fallout 1 on steroids. It's so much fun to go through Fallout 2. I'm having a great time with it so far, and I'm super, super excited to continue going through that game and finishing it. I've played more in Fallout 2 than I have in Fallout 1, but because I still haven't finished it yet, I just can't place it in the award show without knowing how it ends. I couldn't fairly put it in a lot of categories, sadly. But it is a much bigger game than the first Fallout, which is super, super exciting. But yeah, love those two games in particular. I wanted to highlight those for being probably the most unique in that sense, and unexpected for me. However, the winner of Best Gameplay is Metro Exodus. Now, Metro Last Light was last year's gameplay winner, and putting Exodus in this year, it's just carrying on that trend of that immersive experience being incredible. It just feels so good. It was so fun to be in that world and to navigate it and to explore it, and just the way that you feel very much in the boots of Artyom, like you are that guy. It's very fun, and an experience that I had with the Metro series was removing the HUD and those sort of elements, make it as immersive as possible. I really did like the approach that Exodus took with having these more open zones for you to explore and have these optional encounters, and very clear objectives in place if you did just want to go through sort of the main stuff. The moral implications that you can do in each of the zones was amazing. The choices you make, how you handle it, and the consequences of your actions was, I think, very well handled as well. I liked the new elements that it brought. That generational leap between the previous two games and Exodus was very, very felt. It was appreciated too. It was really so much more engaging. I loved Exodus almost entirely across the board. Just so much fun. And the DLC, Sam's story, was amazing to have a different character perspective and also having some voice acting come in and just a cool little follow-up to another character. So I had a lot of fun with the immersive nature of the Metro series, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next one, that's for sure. So Metro Exodus definitely had my favorite gameplay overall, but a really, really tough list because Dishonored was a recent one that we've played, and there's so much to Dishonored from a non-lethal and a lethal standpoint. All of the powers, all of the abilities you have, how you can navigate your environments. It's worthy of that mention as well, that Dishonored is so much fun. The lethal encounters that I've had and that I've seen, and then going through it in non-lethal, like, it's completely different. So many different avenues to take. So Dishonored was actually one that I kind of wrestled with my recency bias of games that we played at the beginning of the year that feel like so long ago, like Metro Exodus and Hollow Knight. Feels like a different year entirely. And then something more recent like Dishonored. It's kind of tough to push that recency bias aside and look at them a little more constructively, I suppose, and be like, how did I feel playing Metro Exodus, and going and having a look and just remembering just how immersed and in love I was with that sort of gameplay style. So Metro, 2 years running, takes the best gameplay spot, which is amazing. And we're going to move into the second part now, which is for best combat. So this has some different games, some same games, but some different games because, I feel like there are games that are more combat focused. Like if you want to talk about best gameplay, there are some games that have incredible combat, very dynamic, very detailed, a lot of work put into the combat. But the gameplay itself, there's not really much to speak for there because there are games that are very much more action based. So I felt like it was appropriate to split them up. So our nominees for best combat is Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, Hollow Knight, Final Fantasy 16, Doom Eternal, and Metro Exodus. So a couple of returning nominees from the previous category, but some new ones. And we do have some recent games as well, because I suppose that combat in more recent games can tend to be a little bit more impressive, a little bit more detailed and engaging, or like larger scale. It's kind of tough to really nail down combat because there's just so much, right? And there's a pretty clear winner in this one for me, just based on I don't really know how to word this one, but it's just the way that the combat consistently felt from start to finish, to even to like it went to lengths and heights that I never would have expected, and that was Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is the winner for best combat. Honestly, just so engaging, so thrilling. The learning curve, with it also being like my first Metroidvania, the learning curve of starting out with just the basic stuff, slowly getting these abilities, improving your equipment, going through this world, all of the boss fights, just general combat was so fun, very, very challenging. And I really, really appreciated being met with those challenging encounters and learning and overcoming them. And I sit at, not having 100, if it goes over 100%, we're at 112% completion on Hollow Knight, and I still haven't finished because it is such a tremendous challenge and hurdle doing Godhome that I gave it my best shot, and I would love to still go back and play that and continue to try. It's not off the cards. I would love to revisit and try and see if I can conquer it and beat it, but it's one of those games that just the combat just continued to be so much fun, especially in a sequence like the Grimm DLC, and fighting Grimm was just, it was amazing. I would get out of my chair and I would be like energized to engage in that combat. And it wasn't just the DLC being amazing, the whole base game was incredible as well. So best combat absolutely goes to Hollow Knight. It just blew me away, and it still continues to do so. And I mean, it says a lot that they essentially have just an entirely combat focused DLC for their final one. Just go and fight in the very heavens. Really impressive, and just masochistic behavior for trying to conquer the pantheons, you know. But yes, Hollow Knight, well-deserved victory for best combat. And also, surprise, there's actually a third category in the gameplay-ish loop here. And I feel like this is quite a fun one as well. So we got gameplay, we got combat, but let's get even more specific. Let's boil it down to the best boss fights. Games that had the best boss battles. And we even have some new contenders in this category as well. So for best boss fights, we have Final Fantasy 16. We have God of War 3. That's up there. We got God of War 3 because I played through the Greek mythology of God of War through live streams on the channel this year. God of War 1 and 2, they were replays, games that I had played years and years ago. But I also played through God of War 3, the PSP titles, and Ascension for the first time. So that was a really nice experience to go through those. I was generally aware of Kratos' larger story and his arc, but being able to get like personally exposed to those games and those storylines, I had such a newfound appreciation for Kratos' Greek story and those games, and the sense of scale in God of War 3 specifically was mind-blowing. Really impressive. I feel like it absolutely deserves to be in this list just for how impressive that game is on a PlayStation 3. Just really cool. Really cool stuff. So God of War 3 is like a bit of a surprise mention because I feel like the live streams don't really get as much attention, or it just kind of like goes under the radar. So it's in the list. Hollow Knight will also be in here for best boss fights. Spider-Man 2 had some really incredible boss fights. Resident Evil 4, if I can say that right, let's try again. Say it with me now. Resident Evil 4, there we go, that sounded much better. And Jedi Survivor. So again, with a couple of the recent games that came out also. And the winner for best boss fights, I really just gotta be upfront and just say it straight up, is Final Fantasy 16. Without delving into potential spoiler territory, because it is a recent release, the boss fights filled me with a sense of exhilaration I didn't believe could exist. The way that those boss fights made me feel. I cannot even begin to describe it in a spoiler-free sense, just that it was honestly enlightening. You would ascend to a higher plane of existence. I now operate on a higher frequency of life after having experienced the boss fights in Final Fantasy 16. Plain and simple. I feel like the best aspect of Final Fantasy 16 are those boss fight encounters. That is where pretty much all of the the effort outside of characterization and storytelling and music went into the boss fights. It's just shining examples of how special that game is those boss fights, the boss themes that accompany them, the scale and just the way that those are all handled, and some of them being very, very unique in terms of their presentation as well. Very, very impressive stuff. So I really do want to give it to Final Fantasy 16 because literally jumping for joy going through that experience. It's just amazing stuff. God of War 3, again, I do just want to say, so good. Like, really impressive fights for a PlayStation 3. Like, I'm looking at that being like, how? You know? I don't know how they made it for that console. It's incredible stuff. It really, really is. So that is the triple gameplay related category. I just felt like it was worth splitting that one up and really kind of putting a magnifying glass on it and thinking a little harder about that one. Now, I've reached a point where we do have some more categories and some very big, some very important ones coming up. But I do want to take a little bit of a break because we have a trailer to show. An actual world premiere trailer at the Mapocolops Game Awards 2023. So without further ado, let's just let the trailer speak for itself and then we'll see how we go.
Do you want to know love? Foster a cell and place it in palm. Do you want to endure? Seedless and carving a mark on the earth without lens placed before me. No light born within me. Just the word, the verse and verse sound.
Awesome. So that was Heavy as Stone, our world premiere trailer of the show. And I was really happy that we got to include, again, another aspect of our community here, because it's just so important. And Joy has been such a valued member of the community for many, many years, which is, it feels so weird saying many, many years for my channel. We're really getting to that point. We're entering the 4th year of Mapocolops, and it's all thanks to you. So again, just another thank you for the community here to have Joy showing off a trailer of the game that they're working on, and also having the music for the game be in the intro sequence to this show as well. So it was very, very special, and I can't wait to play that game myself when it comes out, and I hope many of you are intrigued by that trailer as well, and will be giving it a go. So we're now going to be moving into our next category, as the thunder looms and atmosphere has been provided. We have Best Soundtrack. We're getting into the music now, and this is going to be, in terms of a musical and audio experience, another two-parter, but we're focusing on the soundtrack, the music, the way that a game makes you feel through the sounds. I'm a big musical person. I absolutely will get sucked into a soundtrack and just listen to certain things on repeat constantly. And a lot of these games that we played over the course of this year have just had so many memorable tracks that it's been really hard to nail down this list, because there'll be games that just have incredible main themes. Like that start menu is, I will listen to it on repeat, but then I can't actually remember a lot of the other tracks in the soundtrack. So it's one of those really interesting things to nominate. It's like a consistent soundtrack, or like just like one or two memorable tracks is something to really like think about when you're tossing things up. So there's like games in this list that have iconic themes, but they're not a consistent soundtrack, I suppose. So it's interesting in that sense. But the games that are in the best soundtrack category are Hollow Knight, Signalis, Dragon Age Inquisition, Final Fantasy XVI, Inscription, and Alan Wake 2. And oh my lord, it's so hard to really go through this one, because again, being such like a fan of music, and especially video game soundtracks, and my Spotify Wrapped for the past 4 years in a row having video game music at the #1 spot, with Nobuo Uematsu doing his Final Fantasy thing. It's really hard to nail down soundtrack stuff, but all of these nominees have so many beautiful things going on all the way through, so many beautiful themes. Like Alan Wake 2 having license-free music created specifically for the game itself is great. I really love that approach. Very streamer and content creator friendly, but also just in general, amazing songs that feel like they've been pulled from elsewhere and put to the game, but they've been specifically crafted for the narrative, and it's so beautifully interwoven with the story. Inscription, the way that like certain characters' themes come through, like the one that sits with me the most, I think, would be like the Trapper's theme. Just the way that really sets the mood and the atmosphere is perfect. Hollow Knight's music, Dragon Age Inquisition, and they're all good. Signalis just has some incredible themes on it too, and it like the things that it draws inspiration from as well. Inquisition soundtrack definitely shines in the Trespasser DLC the most. The iconic main menu theme, however, is one that sits with us still to this day. It is so good to listen to. Probably one of my favorite main menu screens and themes for sure. But consistently good music, exceptional music in its DLC, and If there was to be like the best main menu theme, I would also be throwing Soul Reaver 2 into this list, because the main menu theme for Soul Reaver 2, I've been listening to it on repeat for like ever since I heard it for the first time. So ever since that playthrough started, I probably listen to it once a day, at least. Kind of multiple times a day, but we'll just say once a day at least, so it doesn't make me seem like I'm obsessed. But we're not doing main menu themes, but it deserves a shout out. We'll focus on the winner. The winner of the best soundtrack for 2023 is Final Fantasy 16, because holy crap. Those boss themes, the battle theme, the world themes, the ending themes, all of the emotional overtones of that game. My lord, Soken just knocked it out of the park, whipped up just a casual soundtrack while also battling cancer, because that's easy to do. Exceptional work ethic, incredible work, and to be expected, really. Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack is incredible, and I haven't even experienced most of it yet. I'm still working my way through Final Fantasy XIV, but absolutely mind-blowing stuff in Final Fantasy XVI. I have so many favorite themes, but the ending theme is heartbreaking. And it was really beautiful just going through the game. And I think something that was really important for the soundtrack is just the battle theme was very, very important for me too, because it was helping me so much with my feelings as a child playing Final Fantasy growing up, and just how much I loved the music and I listened to it obsessively. And the battle theme for Final Fantasy 16 really harkens back to a specific favorite of mine, Final Fantasy VIII, where it just has such a similar beginning that every time I would get into a fight in Final Fantasy 16, I was teleported right back to being a child and playing PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy and just being in love with it. So that soundtrack as a whole was just really, really amazing. I adored Final Fantasy 16's music, but some really hard nominees. It's really, really challenging, because all of the soundtracks are beautiful, very good music. But we're moving into the next category of audio, which is best sound design. So not necessarily the soundtrack, but everything else that accompanies it, the sound design, if you will. For lack of a better term, that's the name of the category. So the nominees for Best Sound Design is Fatal Frame, Signalis, Inscription, Hollow Knight, Metro Exodus, and Alan Wake 2. Quite a challenging one to separate this one and think on the specific sound design that goes through in all of these, because you've got games that don't use voice acting, like Signalis and Inscription and Hollow Knight. And then you've got the games that do have the voice acting, so it adds a whole other element and another layer. So you've got like these games that need to really sell you on the world with their sound design if it doesn't have voices attached to that one. So best sound design, going through this list, I do want to give it to Hollow Knight. I absolutely want to give it to Hollow Knight. All of the different sort of like the sounds and interactions in the Bapanada, and like Cornifer's humming, and just like there's just so much going on in Hollow Knight. Both on that musical sense, but also all on the sounds and all the ones that the little creatures make. And I just felt like it was really beautiful. A really tough one, actually. Like, this was one of those categories where I don't really settle on a clear winner very easily. It's a lot of tossing and turning, and they're all very, very good. But I just feel, it's all about feeling. I feel that Hollow Knight just kind of really nails that sound design. All right, everyone, we now move into the bread and butter. What I really enjoy the most about gaming, what pulls me in, what takes me all the way to the finish line is the narrative. A beautiful story is the main selling point for me. Everything else is necessary that goes into making and creating a beautiful game world. But I get hooked on a story, I attach myself to the characters, I get really immersed. It's why I love RPGs so much. But it's, once again, a challenging little thing to sort of nominate games here, because narratives can operate on so many different levels, because you've got the new games, like the very first in their stories or standalone games that need to start from scratch. They start from nothing with their story. They have to sell it to you immediately and bring you into a brand new world, which is really hard to do, because a lot of people are really hesitant to give new games a chance and take that risk over something that's maybe a little more established or a little more popular. As sad as that is, it is a risk to go, here's our brand new game, brand new world, and people are like, ah. And the worst part is, here's our brand new game, and then it's sort of like immediately that game is now forever known as, this is the new Mass Effect, this is the new this is the new that, this is the this game crossed with this game that you've always wanted, and that game now has to live up to that expectation and exceed them, when sometimes they don't even ask for it. An example I could think of was, I remember before Pentiment came out, that was being sort of treated as Obsidian's Disco Elysium, and they had to come out and be like, stop. It's not, because they didn't say that. That was sort of, that picked up on a journalism thing, and everyone started going, Obsidian's making a Disco Elysium type experience, and they had to be like, guys, Disco Elysium is a masterpiece. This is on a smaller scale, right? It's just because it has a level of detective stuff, it's not a disco-like experience. We love Disco Elysium. I would love more from that world. I'd love more games in that sort of style. But it was definitely going down that sort of train of thought when Pentiment was coming out, where they're like, it's gonna be another Disco Elysium, and they had to sort of pump the brakes on the expectations. And it's good that they did do that, even though I love Pentiment dearly. It was so much fun. Yeah, it's not a Disco Elysium like game, so sometimes marketing and fan reactions can take on a mind of their own and really skew narratives. So it's really challenging to establish something new and original. Unfortunately, we're in a landscape where we are seeing that less and less. We're getting adaptations and remakes and remasters and less original content, and it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of original content that's been coming out lately, that we've seen like this year, for example, has bombed, and it's bombed hard, and it is because, unfortunately, just it's not that good, or it's just not, they're not doing it right, or maybe it's predatory monetization stuff, or it's games as a service, or it's just sort of playing into a trope that has already long since expired or we're tired of. It's tough out there, but we still do have, time and time again, these diamonds that do shine, and they do come out that are brand new original experiences. So it's not like we're living in a desolate hellscape of no original content. It's just harder and harder for people to really get into it, which is why I think probably reveal trailers are so important to show a genuine little slice of the world that you're going to partake in, because we get a lot of misleading trailers of big massive games that come out, and so people just have trust issues, so that's a narrative tangent for you. That's free. And that leads into what I was about to say next, is essentially sequels have such a huge advantage because they're able to pay off previous stories. The amount of fruit that is born from like starting off in a story and having 2 or 3 games later, all of that payoff, all of that additional storytelling really plays to its advantage. So it is quite tough to do a narrative nominee list that has first time stories and sequels going up against each other, because some narratives are stronger with more weight behind them from the previous games. It is what it is. I mean, do we end up splitting it up to a best narrative for original first time stories only and then best narrative sequel? I mean, that can kind of work. Maybe I'll do that next year, who knows? But this year, it's just the one best narrative, and the nominees in this list is Dragon Age Origins, Metro Exodus, Dishonored, Soul Reaver 2, Alan Wake 2, and Inscription. So a beautifully long-winded tangent to get to our nominee list today, but you try doing a full awards show unscripted and seeing how you go. It's very difficult, it's very challenging. Challenging is probably the word of the day. Because sometimes you get a couple of adjectives stuck in your head, especially when you're just running through some rambles and it ends up repeating itself a lot. So I do apologize for that. Another challenge for me to get through. But best narrative, great list of nominees here. Our winner is Soul Reaver 2 for just so many exceptional reasons, but Soul Reaver 2's narrative is so strong. It's so powerful. It continuously blew my mind. And this is the prime example that I'm talking of with narrative payoff. Soul Reaver 2 bears fruit in such an exceptional way. It builds off of Blood Omen. It builds off of Soul Reaver. And I won't go into spoilers for the story because I genuinely believe that you should experiencing it. Yes, you should experience it. It is tremendously worth it. The quality of that storytelling it feels big to say unparalleled. It's not exactly unparalleled, but as close as you could get to that. There's other really, really good stuff out there. But Soul Reaver 2 is impressive, borderline masterpiece in terms of that story, that narrative, the way that it strengthens the past titles, gives context to past titles, has that tremendous payoff while the story itself is really, really good. Soul Reaver 2 is a very clear winner for best narrative, but again, while I say a clear winner, it's still damn difficult. Alan Wake 2's narrative also very well deserved for its Game Awards win, because the narrative of Alan Wake 2 also very, very strong, very satisfying as a sequel to a long amount of payoff with a sequel that came out 13 years the original game, it's not a prequel, the original game came out 13 years ago, and then you've got Control that comes out in between, and the lore and world building of that all comes in, and it's so well done. It really, really is so well done. So all the games did very, very well narratively. And continuing on sort of that story trend, our next category is best world building and lore. That's sort of all encapsulated together. The world building, the lore. And there is an actual specific rule for this category that we had last year that we will still have in play this year. And basically, for best world building and lore, there is no sequels that get put into this category. This is the first entry point into the world, because world building obviously expands in sequels. It can change, it can improve, it expands. So it really is that first experience to a world, how they've built it, and the lore that is given to you in that first experience. So, instead of the world building and lore in a sequel that just has so much more behind it. This is one of those rules that we set that I feel is very fitting. So, for best world building and lore, we have Hollow Knight, we have Dragon Age Origins, we have Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen, we have Signalis, we have Fallout, and we have Inscription. So all brand new worlds with unique world building and lore. And it was really weird putting Fallout in this list because it's one of those game series where I've grown up with it. And I started with later titles and have now gone back to the original stuff. Really weird to do that with that in mind, especially with most of the time my approach on the channel is go back to the start and go through in release order. So it's been quite curious to have a situation like that occur with the original Fallout being like, oh, this is where it started, this is where it came from, you know. And it, yeah, just very, very weird to put in there. But the winner of best world building and lore wholeheartedly goes to Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins, it's unbelievable. By episode 5 of my 48 episode Let's Play for Dragon Age Origins, I had decided that it was my favorite BioWare game and my favorite BioWare series. So it, by episode 5, had already taken Knights of the Old Republic and Mass Effect and put them to the side as, I love you guys so much, but this is something truly, truly special. Dragon Age captured me immediately. And like I said, really, really early on, that world building, that lore, reading through the codex of that game, I fell in love. And reading through it was amazing. And the way that they handled it was really well done, because you've got lore that's being written from different groups, from different perspectives, and it allows that level of realism and depth to the world, because not every perspective is true. Sometimes it's just their experience. Sometimes what actually happened has been left out or rewritten, and it allows for so much room to improve and build upon that in future titles as well, and to add context to things, and etc., etc. But from that starting standpoint, the world building and lore of Dragon Age Origins is beautiful, very, very beautiful. And I had a great time going through and reading so much of it. Like sitting down for story time, going through the codex was amazing. Like the Mass Effect codex was all right, but it was a lot of like sort of technical stuff where it was like, this is how the world works and this is your spacecraft. And I love sci-fi. I'm a big techno sci-fi guy. Retro sci-fi is like my favorite genre ever. But the Mass Effect Codex it doesn't hit the same as that world building established in Dragon Age. So again, really, really good nominees in this list, especially like Hollow Knight, setting everything up with that story. There's so much cool stuff going on in the background, and like so far before your little knight even enters Hallow Nest, you know. Inscription's narrative was really, really cool to unravel that mystery, and then the meta narrative that's going on in the real world at the same time. There's just so many creative things going on with the world building and the lore that's been established in these game worlds. So tough, but yeah, Dragon Age Origins takes the cake for that one for sure. Now we're entering the final segment of the show here. We've got a few more categories. We have essentially 2 more genuine categories, and then we're going to be moving into just a little bit of other things before we move into the finale with our game of the year, which is great because I've been standing here for a tremendous amount of time and my legs hurt and I can't wait to go to sleep because it is 2 a.m. But what can you do? We're doing a Game Awards show, baby. Let's have fun with it. So we're now moving into the next category, which is Best Art Direction. I'm a big art direction guy. I love the games being crafted in unique ways, in memorable ways, and just stuff that stands out. And art direction is so good. Being an artiste myself for many, many years before I decided to focus on one thing and I chose YouTube. I love art. I've created a lot of my own art, and it was always that thing that I wanted to do as a career and as a job before opting to pursue this. Is I wanted to eventually potentially be like a graphic designer or a concept artist, diving into that sort of thing. Concept art and character design is so much fun. So I love art so much. So art direction is a fun category here, and one that is very much dominated by a particular type of game. And as you can see with the nominee list here, that'll make sense. Best art direction nominees, we have Hollow Knight, we have Dishonored, we have Soul Reaver 2, Signalis, Inscription, and Return of the Obra Dinn. So big old theme here is indie titles and art direction, because they do a good job at it. And again, quite tough to leave some games off of this list as a result, because there's some really, really beautiful games that are not on this list. We can only choose 6. So best art direction is like, oh man, I almost get hung up on it because I'm like, I cannot go on an art tangent right now. But we're just gonna blurt it out. The winner for best art direction out of these nominees is Hollow Knight, because look at that game. Look at that game. It's gorgeous. I love the varieties of all of the different areas, the backgrounds, the detail in those backgrounds. I know that there is a lot going into Hollow Knight as a full experience that really sells you on that world and the beauty, like the soundtrack that goes into like going through Green Path for the first time, just exceptionally memorable. But the art direction was just great. I love the designs of all of the enemies, all of the characters, all of that world. It's just such a fun art style. The art direction of Hollow Knight absolutely takes the cake, but like Dishonored really impressed me, and then finding out that it was the same art director for like Half-Life made too much sense, and like just the way that it all looks and that world is built. Like Dishonored is some weird alternate universe Half-Life in a sense because of it visually. But Signalis, just the cutscenes of Signalis and exploring that world, so good. Inscriptions, designs of all of the cards, of all of the characters, of the different acts of that game, and Return of the Obra Dinn. Like that whole entire game's art style is so cool. A little bit hard to look at first, and your eyes have to adjust to it, but just having that, oh man, it's just amazing. These games that are so like the art direction is almost that core experience. Really tough list here because I just want to give the win to all of them. They're all super, super close, but Hollow Knight does absolutely take that top spot for me. One of the first things that I bought after finishing Hollow Knight was the Wanderer's Journal, which is just filled with lots of cool like art stuff and design about creating the world and all that sort of stuff. And it's again one of those games, you finish it, you want to research and get stuff. I'm like, I need to own something from this game, and Hollow Knight, in terms of its art direction, was one of those. So that's the art direction category. And now this is a unique category. This is most unique. So this is the most unique game played on the channel in 2023. So an opportunity for some different games to make their way in here, and also shine a bit of a spotlight on some other games as well that don't really fit or have much of a chance in the heavy hitting categories. So I want to include the most unique games of 2023 here. So the nominees is actually starting off with Entropy 02, A Way Out, The Last Guardian, Papers, Please, Return of the Obra Dinn, and Inscription. So all of them very, very unique in their own ways. Entropy 02 is the most unique in terms of it being a mod. It's not an actual game, and it's not an official release either. It's a modded game, but it won Mod of the Year when it came out, and rightfully so. It was very, very impressive. Valve have a level of quality and a standard that is very hard to reach, and a lot of mods that I've played of Valve games tend to sort of not really have that stuff, and it makes sense because it's like a fan-made mod, not official product. But Entropy Zero 2 really surprised me and impressed me too by it felt like an actual part of the Half-Life narrative. I think there's a lot of people that consider Entropy Zero to be their like headcanon of like part of the story, and Entropy Zero 2 is very well realized. So I really liked having the opportunity to play that, and I'll be keeping my eye on what can come next from that, because I believe there is something else in that sort of level, because I've had a couple of recommendations after playing Entropy Zero and Zero 2 that there's something else, I think. So I'll potentially be looking into that, but very, very unique. A Way Out is, I guess, one of those that's like more unique to me. It's not really a game that I play or have played often, and I did that as a co-op stream with Dex on the channel. We did that in a few parts, and it was so fun. It's some of the most fun that I've had on the channel. Playing co-op with Dex is some of the most fun that I've ever had playing video games, especially as someone that hasn't grown up with a lot of real life friends to play games with. I've had a few, but like it's never been like that let's play a co-op game together sort of mentality. So having the opportunity to go through like Halo and Gears of War and Call of Duty and stuff like that with Dex has been really, truly special. And playing A Way Out was it was chaos. It was fun. And I loved the element of that split screen. And it was so cool. I would recommend watching through just to see how it goes. But super, super unique in that sense. And I really adored it. This is also an opportunity for The Last Guardian to get a bit of a place in this nominations list as well, because again, it's just one of those ones where The Last Guardian isn't really going to sit with all of those other games, sadly, as much as I want it to, because I really had a great time with it. It was a really beautiful game. I loved Trico and that sort of element and how realistic the behavior was, sometimes annoying in that sense. You're teaching and training an animal in a video game, and that's going to be a big pain point for people, because a lot of people are not patient. Also, a lot of people are not really experienced with animals, and also putting that in a game where gameplay and gamers are really easily frustrated, very relatable. And so putting intentionally frustrating mechanics into a game that can be hard to sort of master, it's always a challenge for many, many people. And The Last Guardian had plenty of challenges in that sense, but a unique adventure, very similar to Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, because they all sort of have a consistent style to them, but they're all very unique at the same time. So The Last Guardian, I really wanted to at least give it a little bit of time in the award show, because I had a good time with it. And that's the really important thing to hone in on, right? Is like, out of all the games that I played on the channel, there's probably only like 2 or 3 that kind of didn't hit the mark for me and weren't as good as the rest, right? But out of all the other games I played, I all loved them. I had a really, really good time with them. So it's hard to do an awards show to only celebrate a few, and then some feel left out. And I'm like, but this game was really good. It just can't be represented at the showcase, But what can you do? So this is why we do a category like most unique and stuff like that. And then there's also a follow-up category that'll dive into this more. But that's The Last Guardian. Papers, Please was so surprising, because I didn't know what to expect. It was just highly recommended. We dived in. We're like, let's check it out. I kind of had no idea what I was getting myself into. And putting yourself in the shoes of a passport booth officer, was like this fun thing at first, and then it evolves into this really challenging and emotionally gripping story, because you've got like these people coming through, and you've got the moral dilemmas, and you know that you realize that the place that you're living in is unsafe, and like you've got to try and get out of there, and there's so many different endings and ways that the story can go, and you can kind of have fun with it and like perform that character, or you can be very stonewalling and cold and shut people out and go goodbye and that sort of thing, do as you're told, or you like open yourself up to, you know, you're more empathetic with people, and you see the stories that play out there, and very, very unique. And that obviously, as soon as I finished Papers, Please, led me into wanting to dive into the next experience, which was Return of the Obra Dinn. If we're thinking unique, oh my god, Return of the Obra Dinn is one of the most unique experiences I've ever had the pleasure of going through, and it was very hard, and I struggled a lot to play it on a Let's Play, and I think playing that blind as well is really embarrassing. It's like I really probably put myself out in the most vulnerable way in Obra Dinn. I made a fool of myself, I embarrassed myself in that playthrough, and I annoyed a lot of people too, and it's quite upsetting because I loved playing that game, and I loved the mystery, and I loved the satisfaction of the pieces falling into place and getting some genuine correct answers, and a lot of unfortunate like sort of trying to force some things because I'm like, how does this work? So not my best moment on the channel, and unfortunately one of those sore spots where I feel that I let people down, and I do have a couple of playthroughs that end up that way, where I feel like I didn't do it justice, and maybe I let people down, and that always weighs on me so heavily. There's a couple, like I said, a couple of games that's happened for, but Return of the Obra Dinn is so much fun, and I think that's the important thing, is I still had a lot of fun, right? It's not a sour experience for me in terms of my playthrough and how I played it, but I probably could have approached it better. It's just, obviously hindsight is 2020. I can look back on it and go, man, this could have been so much better, but it's a blind playthrough. I can't really preempt what's going to happen and how a playthrough is going to go, which is why they are always genuine, as you know, as much as I wish that I could always do something perfectly. Sometimes, you know, not everything can be perfect and not everything will hit the mark, but most unique, Return of the Obra Dinn. Very, very unique. And then at the end of this one, with this nominee list, we have Inscription as well, and just so cool, right? And it's not unique in terms of the fact that it's like a card game, but it's how that card game is played, it's the rules surrounding it, it's the world in which that card game is played, and it's the way that that story shifts over time and goes into multiple different acts, and how unique it is that it then shifts to like a real world live action portion, and how that integrates into the story and the world as well was fascinating, and it leaves you hooked on the mystery. So that was a tremendous amount of fun, and it makes me really, really, really want to get into the rest of Daniel Mullen's games as well. There's like Hex and Pony Island that are on my list to play, and Pony Island 2 just got announced at the Game Awards as well, and that trailer, so that's all that I've seen of that sort of Pony Island thing. That trailer looked mind-boggling. I was all in as soon as I saw that stuff, so very excited to jump into those and see what kind of experiences they will be, you know. So those are the most unique nominees, and the winner of that list is Return of the Obra Dinn. So that, I think, deserves that most unique spot in a very unique list, but it really speaks volumes for how much I enjoyed that experience as well, and how it did make an impact on me playing through it. So I loved my experience with it. Not as proud of the playthrough, sadly, but it does win this category. And then we have the next section, which is like, I guess in the same vein of our most unique here, which is this one isn't actually a nominees list, so there isn't a winner in this category. because this is sort of one of our final categories. We've got our biggest ones out of the way, outside of Game of the Year stuff. But this is honorable mentions because I do want to take some time to address games that are not really in the awards show that I still had a lot of fun with, or maybe they've shown up in 1 or 2 awards, but I still want to talk about them, you know? So honorable mentions, I think the first one that we should talk about is a game that's been entirely absent, which is What Remains of Edith Finch. I did play that game because it's kind of one of those ones that's very easily falls by the wayside, because it was done in like one video. Like it was like this, like a one and done sort of experience going through that, and I loved it. What Remains of Edith Finch was a really beautiful, emotional story, and you're sort of going through and exploring this narrative about this family, and you're getting taken on all sorts of different sort of journeys based on the family members that we're like looking at and getting involved with. And I did just want to honorable mention it and throw it in here that yes, I played that game, and yes, I enjoyed it, and it was not forgotten about. I did really, really enjoy that, and I love the opportunity to be able to sit down and play through a game that you can finish in a few hours or less, and you can do like one video on it. I think that's really fun because I do have a dedicated playlist for games completed in one video, you know, because like we've got like Limbo and Inside in that one, and also another game that I played after Edith Finch, which was Dear Esther, which was kind of like the walking simulator game. But What Remains of Edith Finch, I did just want to mention it, that I thought it was really, really enjoyable and loved my time with it. Also, a game that it's almost surprising that it's not in the previous categories, and I guess that just speaks volumes for like how big the games that we've played on the channel are this year. Even though this, I think, is the lowest amount of games I've played on the channel since I was doing stuff like full time. Like I think 2021 and 2022 both had upwards of 40-ish games played on the channel, and we didn't crack 30 this year. We're in like the high 20s of games, and that is, I would partially say, due to Dragon Age having like 2 of the 3 games be like close to 50 episodes plus each. So that obviously does have a big amount of presence on the channel. Plus, I haven't been going too crazy with so many games on the channel at once, especially some big time RPGs, because like I said at the beginning, like there has been feelings of burnout and pushing myself very, very hard. And I think I'm seeing the consequences of that more often than not lately, because we've just been kind of full steam ahead, daily uploads, and the only times we've taken breaks is moving house or getting sick, you know, so I haven't really allowed myself rest. So that's why the word of the day is challenging. There's so many challenges to overcome, but I will overcome them, you know. Tangent, however, is we're going to go back on track. Honorable mention, a game that, like I said, surprisingly not even included previously, is Max Payne. I've played the first Max Payne a short while ago before Alan Wake 2 came out, and wasn't able to fit in Max Payne 2 before Alan Wake 2, unfortunately. But we have that to look forward to. Max Payne is so much fun. The bullet time mechanic is great. Really, really early Remedy was really surprising to me, because I had played Alan Wake and Control at that point, and that was kind of my Remedy experience. And I was like, Remedy is like weird and cool and surreal and all that kind of stuff. But I was really curious about Max Payne and going back to the beginning, because it looked like it was more serious, because it was like, you know, this noir sort of experience. So I was like, maybe this will be sort of Remedy have grown into the weird stuff. But no, it was weird from the very beginning. And I loved that so much, that there was so many sort of stylistic things that Remedy does that were there from the very beginning, like the live action TV stuff, to just like their storytelling style. Sam Lake, baby, he knows how to write something cool and magic and make a game out of it. And I will play anything that Sam Lake writes for sure. So Max Payne was a tremendous amount of fun to go through. The story was fun. The characters were super enjoyable. I loved the graphic novel style approach to the cutscenes. There was big story moments in there that were just really, really strange. So I almost would put Max Payne in most unique as well, to be honest. Yeah, with that in mind, just a big old honorable mention to Max Payne. And again, James McCaffrey. Very, very good voice for Max Payne consistently. Also, honorable mentions to Soul Reaver and Blood Omen from the Legacy of Kain series, because Soul Reaver 2 has had the most presence in the awards show because it has the most payoff. And this is something I was talking about before. It has the benefit of having 2 games before it and really being able to have a tremendous amount of payoff story-wise. Incredible stuff. But it is important to really highlight the games that came before it. Blood Omen was very challenging because it is super, super archaic in terms of its gameplay approach. It's like a top-down. It's very finicky with swapping with spells and items, and the heart of darkness is forever burned into my memory. But you get to a point where you get used to it, and it's actually quite fun. Challenging, but very, very fun. And we deciphered Nosgoth blood script and translated it in real time. That was fun. Not many games will push you to do that, and are very optional. You don't get forced to do that. It's just my approach. But it was a tremendous amount of fun, and I loved going through Blood Omen, and it made me, I was happy that I played that game and I didn't skip it, because a lot of people have only played Soul Reaver and beyond because Blood Omen was too difficult for them to get into, from what I've seen, which is why I think a remake is a good idea. Genuinely, for that world, people should experience it. But Soul Reaver was also magical. It just goddamn killed me with the way that sort of game ends and then leads into Soul Reaver 2. I kind of treat them almost as one game, one story because of that. But the Soul Reaver established some incredible lore there that Soul Reaver 2 just built on in such an exceptional way. But those 2 games are very, very important. So I do want to give them the honorable mentions that I feel that they deserve. And then I also want to talk about Fatal Frame, because that was a horror game that we played over Halloween and my introduction to the Fatal Frame series. Also another game like Legacy of Kain that was recommended to me back in 2020 during the Silent Hill days of please play Fatal Frame, from one of my earliest commenters, Chaos in My Breath, who I think still lingers from time to time. So one of my very earliest viewers way back during Silent Hill. So I felt quite happy pushing out Fatal Frame during that time, because I obviously think about those very early viewers and members of my community that were there from the very beginning, being like, I hope you play this one day. Anytime I play like a long recommended game, I always think about that stuff, and that I hope that like people are like, oh my god, he's finally playing it. You know, it's such a weird feeling to think about that I have that impact. It's super strange. But Fatal Frame, spooky as hell. Scared the pants off of me because ghosts is a weakness of mine. But I loved the mechanic, the gameplay section of like photography game. They were like Pokemon Snap, but make it scary, and it works super, super well. Until it gets quite a bit frustrating at the end, like I've already touched on from a gameplay angle. But I think the story and the premise was really, really cool. I loved learning about the mystery of what had happened there and fixing it. The gameplay, like I said, with the different sort of film, like survival horror, but instead of a gun, it's a camera. was really, really well done and quite satisfying to go through. And I am excited to continue with the sequels one day for sure. And then that's sort of like the bulk of the honorable mentions, because that covers kind of everything else. I mean, should I just say Splinter Cell? I just say the word Splinter Cell as an honorable mention? As sad as it is to say that I played 2 Splinter Cell games this year, 3 technically, because I played 2 versions of one title. We did play both versions of Double Agent and Splinter Cell Conviction, and we are seeing that unfortunate sort of downfall of the Splinter Cell series, sadly, after their peak of Chaos Theory. But there's your Splinter Cell mention, Dex. And then I'm just waiting to play Blacklist soon to close out the Splinter Cell series until the remake maybe comes out. But we'll see. Ubisoft, will they do it? Won't they do it? Beyond Good and Evil 2? I don't know. But there you go. Splinter Cell, honorable mention, but a little bit of a downfall of the series, sadly. So that's going to conclude the honorable mentions, and now we'll be going into the final 3. The final 3. So 2 of those are same as last year. Actually, no, all 3 are the same as last year, but we have 2 Game of the Year categories because it's important to split up the Game of the Year 2023 and my overall favorite game on the channel for 2023 that didn't release this year, right? But before we get into the Game of the Year stuff for the final stuff, we want to look at the fan favorites, which is our most viewed content of 2023. So at the time of recording this video, we go to the videos and I check their view counts for the first episode, because the very typical Let's Play experience is a first episode always is like obviously going to have the most views, and then you watch it just die off, and then the ending probably picks up a little bit. That's kind of the Let's Play experience, sadly. Maintaining a consistent viewership across episodes for a channel this large is quite impossible, especially for like the amount of content that I put out. It's hard for people to keep up. It's also hard for people to stay or remain invested as much as I try. It's just a multitude of different reasons. And first episode is always like first impressions, that sort of thing. How a game begins is what people sort of remember a lot. It's late. Logan's just a sleepy boy. Don't mind him. But yeah, fan favorites is the first episode of the series, and just really ranked by its view count. 2022 was very much an outlier for insane view counts on a couple of series, because I had the benefit of playing through 2021 a lot of FromSoft games. So when Elden Ring came out in 2022, I had that community, I had that viewership to support that content, which was really, really awesome. And then we really lucked out by entering a Valve arc on the channel by playing Half-Life and Portal. And I did not realize, I completely underestimated the rabid and passionate fan base of Valve players to wholeheartedly rally behind my content there, which was amazing and mind-blowing how big the reception was to Valve-related content. And I now completely understand why Valve fans feel the way that they do, especially about Half-Life 3. So, excuse me, 2022 was massive for views, and 2023 we've had some big games on the channel this year as well, but understandably so, I've played a lot of new releases this year, which is going to automatically be a lot less viewership because a lot of people wait until they've played it themselves, or they sort of aren't ready to watch playthroughs of it, which does make sense. it's such a big challenge of trying to juggle old and new content as a variety gamer. But luckily, I did play some older and more classic games that got a lot of attention, which was great. So our most viewed game on the channel for 2023 was Subnautica, with 71,000 views, which is incredible. So yeah, Subnautica was alongside Hollow Knight and Outer Wilds as my like top 3 most recommended games on the channel, and they were there for ages. It was like Subnautica, Outer Wilds, Hollow Knight, Subnautica, Outer Wilds, Hollow Knight, and that was the constant recommendation of these 3 games, please play. And we've now played all 3 of those games, so my channel is now irrelevant, and I will now be announcing my retirement. Subnautica took off in a massive way to be the most viewed content of the year. And I did think that it would have been Hollow Knight, but surprisingly, Subnautica was the biggest release. It does make me wish that maybe I spent a little bit longer with the series and like I said, messed about with like the base building and the gameplay loop of it, because it was really satisfying. It was just a struggle for me on how to structure that Let's Play, right? But very happy with the fan reactions, and I hope for those of you that did watch and enjoy Subnautica, you had a good time with it. And we'll definitely dive into, I can't believe I did dive again. It's unintentional, I promise. We'll dive into Below Zero at some point for sure, and maybe even revisiting the original Subnautica as well, to explore things that I potentially missed. But that's Subnautica, very big amount of views. Moving into the next game is the game that was previously excluded last year. So it was started in 2022, but because it sort of was excluded from last year's awards, it does bleed over into this year, and it does get included, which is Dragon Age Origins, and that also sits at that 70,000 mark as well in terms of viewership. So starting off very strong at the first episode of a very long-running series for Dragon Age. So very cool to see that reaction. I think that is the highest out of my BioWare content. I don't think I have a Mass Effect Episode 1 that is this high, but I did have my Sovereign episode of Mass Effect 1 go viral more than anything else. A lot of people got introduced to my Mass Effect series from that episode that just hit the algorithm in a very particular way. I don't know how, but that video got a lot of attention. So I might be wrong. Maybe Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect 2 might have reached that viewership by now over time. I haven't actually checked. So Dragon Age Origins at 71,000 as well. So that takes second place. And then our third most viewed in 2023 is Hollow Knight, naturally, at 61,000. So still very much up there, which was super satisfying and rewarding to have the level of recommendation actually have that follow through for Subnautica and Hollow Knight. Not so much for Outer Wilds, though. I was let down. You guys let me down. I was expecting millions now. Outer Wilds did not perform anywhere near as well as Subnautica or Hollow Knight. I don't know if that is just because of a smaller, more passionate and vocal fan base, or whether the algorithm just unfortunately didn't do it justice. I don't really know. But yeah, Subnautica and Hollow Knight really took off, and Outer Wilds did do really well, just not as much in that trio of golden recommendations. So that's the top 3 fan favorites of the year. And then there is a pretty substantial drop in views for the following Let's Plays. And then there's a lot of playthroughs that are sort of around this same level of viewership. So I do have quite a few that sit in this ballpark. We've got Dragon Age Inquisition next up, which was 36,000. Dragon Age 2, which was 27,000. And then Papers, Please, which was 25,000. And then there's like ones like Inscription, it's like 24,000, and it starts sitting in that same sort of ballpark. So really, really well done for those playthroughs. They did really well, especially for some indie titles and some smaller games. But then obviously you've got some indie games that are just so massive, like Subnautica, that they just get a tremendous amount of attention because I guess the Let's Play experience is so fun to engage in. But yeah, Dragon Age gets to be there all 3 times. It's very interesting to see like the obviously, I guess because of how people feel about the second game, it's the lowest in the viewership. But maybe I should have put Dragon Age 2 in the honorable mentions because I love Dragon Age 2. I had so much fun with it. Hawke's great. The characters are great. It's a beautiful character-driven narrative. It doesn't deal with the end of the world or the chosen one or stuff like that. It's just the characters in this place, and it's so cool. And I love Dragon Age 2 a lot. Honorable mention to Dragon Age 2. And now we find ourselves in the final 2 categories of the show. Thank you so much for joining me so far for all of this showcasing and awards and rambling. I hope you have been enjoying this show and continue to enjoy it all the way to the end. It's been an absolute pleasure to put all of this weird stuff together when I decided, you know what, I'm actually going to do something different this year. I'm actually going to try and put some production effort into a video to celebrate my community, to celebrate the games on the channel, and to just be very thankful and grateful that I get to be here. You know, thanks to our best-selling author, Alan Wake, who wrote us the Game Awards. He wrote me into existence. I have owned this jacket for years. The only thing I had to buy for this outfit was the brown tie. That's kind of the hilarious part. I was always meant to be here. Never was going to be here. Always was going to be here. Honestly, as much as we've Alan Wakeified the whole thing, it really was just the easiest theme to emulate. I don't really have the budget to accommodate some sort of CGI Ifrit in the background, and I can't prime live on camera. So, you know, we've got to go with a bit more of a grounded theme, and I feel like this is fun set dressing. So I hope you love and appreciate all of this stuff because it was fun to put together. It was a lot of effort to put together. Very exhausting, but I feel like just worth it. And obviously I'm very passionate about it and I love being able to do this stuff. And we'll see what happens next year. Next stop, the world, right? We'll see. But final 2 categories, which is my overall favorite game on the channel that did not release this year, and then Game of the Year for 2023. So we're going to dive into the overall favorite game, the second to last category. And the nominees are Hollow Knight, Dragon Age Origins, Inscription, Fallout, Soul Reaver 2, and Signalis. These are the 6 heavy hitters that find themselves in the finale, duking it out, that really sat with me, really resonated with me, and genuinely are so special that they're all winners in my book. I love all of my children equally. But out of these overall favorites, there is a game that, like I said, when I finished it, I can't even express like how it made me feel, but I just had such a major appreciation for narrative storytelling at that moment in time that I was like just blown away by the fact that a story and dialogue and script work like that could be in a video game, and a video game that was like over 2 decades old at that point, right? And I was just stunned by the quality and also then retroactively like disappointed at the fact that like that level is just not very commonly found nowadays. But that is a whole discussion and tangent in itself. The winner of my overall favorite game on the channel for this year is Soul Reaver 2, Legacy of Kain series, coming in clutch. Soul Reaver 2, like I said, became one of my top 3 games of all time when I finished it. It went straight to that list, and it has remained there even as time has passed and I have sat with it and thought about it. I listen to the main theme at least once a day. I think about this every day. I cannot wait to play Blood Omen 2 and Defiance, the final 2 games in the series, and then I will sit there and join the waiting room for a remake or a new game or anything. The series is kind of in a weird limbo. It keeps, we've got people buying out groups, and then games, like apparently there was an MMO or something, and it got cancelled, and it's just like, it's such a rich world and amazing story. Obviously, I don't know how these next 2 games are going to play out and how the story is going to go, so I'm very excited that I still have a couple of games to continue the series, but obviously people are clamoring for more in the very passionate Legacy of Kain fan base. Soul Reaver 2 is absolutely, positively my favorite game on the channel for this year. But again, they're all winners in my book because it's really hard. Like I tell you, Dragon Age Origins became my favorite BioWare game instantly. Like pretty much instantly in terms of the perspective of the playthrough length. And Hollow Knight is magic. And it was made by a few people in my hometown. Like, it's just magic. Signalis, Inscription, and Fallout, all of those games, even some games that don't get to meet the top 6, were just so good. This is a really challenging year. It's just hard to really rank games, which is why it's almost a relief I only pick one winner and then go, and the rest win too in my heart. So Soul Reaver 2 is my overall favorite game on the channel that did not release this year. Which brings us to our finale. The game of the year for 2023, the main event, the big one, and it is not Baldur's Gate 3. Because Baldur's Gate 3, its time will come, but it does not get to be here on stage tonight. We have 5 nominees because there were only 5 games that released this year that I played and saw through to the end, which is Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Alan Wake 2. And I cannot stress this enough that even as I was prepping to record this, and for the past week, I have looked at this list and flip-flopped consistently. So I do want to state that it was never a sure thing of what the game of the year winner is going to be. I even genuinely, as I was taking breaks and recording, looked at this and swapped winner around and went, oh, but like how I feel, my feelings, like it's really tough. If there was ever a category in this awards show that would have a tie of 2 winners, it would be this one, because there is 2 games in particular that outshine the rest, which is why it's so damn tough. Obviously, there can only be one winner, but I think to determine this winner, we need to consult the Mind Place. I think we need to figure this one out and sort of dive a bit deeper and determine what the game of the year for 2023 really is. Let's have a look. What is my game of the year for 2023? This is really hard to determine, but I think I need to do profiling to figure this one out. What is the game of the year for 2023?
Ram these words down your throat. Made you choke on these words.
What is the game of the year for 2023?
This is how I need the word died. I wish I was dead. Words.
What is the game of the year for 2023?
This is my story.
Is my ending. No heroes, only victims. You are in a horror story. I wrote this story. This is your final scene.
That's right. Our game of the year for 2023 is Alan Wake 2. What a journey. The story of the journey of Alan Wake, the musical. And it's absolutely game of the year. Very much tied, as much as I can't give two winners, it's very much tied with Final Fantasy 16. But Alan Wake 2 was just exceptional. It really, really was. And narratively speaking, musically speaking, the art direction, the voice acting, just visuals as well. Very, very impressive. And it does lose out on some of the technical issues that I experienced, sadly. But I think, obviously, with that aside, what they're trying to push in terms of the actual experience and the game itself was just, it was good. It was so good, and it made me so very happy to play. It really did. And I hope that for those of you that have also experienced Alan Wake 2, understand why, and for so many people that got exposed to Alan Wake through the Herald of Darkness show being played live on stage at the Game Awards, got to experience Alan Wake 2 eventually. You know, people are like, I'm curious and like want to play the game now after experiencing that performance, which is very, very cool. So I also wanted to express my gratitude towards that sequence and the game as well by doing something special. So I hope that you have enjoyed that showcase. And that's kind of the funny thing is, like, in terms of game of the year, flippy-flopping between Alan Wake 2 and Final Fantasy 16 was really, really rough, because Final Fantasy 16 made me feel like a kid playing Final Fantasy again, which was so important. And I hadn't felt like that since Final Fantasy 12 in 2006 when that game came out. And I didn't even get it until I think 2007, because I didn't get games as soon as they came out. So I think I might have got that like a year later, maybe even 2008, one of those years. I cannot remember the exact year, but I was like 12, 13 years old at the time, and I am now 28, and that is a tremendous amount of time to have Final Fantasy and be like, man, they're just not hitting the same anymore. But Final Fantasy 16 took me right back. It filled me with that childlike wonder and joy, and how much I loved playing Final Fantasy as a kid. And I think that the story was incredible. The gameplay was so much fun. I think that there could have been more to really enhance the combat, a lot of different systems that could be put into place. But Creative Business Unit 3's first single-player experience with having MMOs behind their back, I think they did an incredible job with the single-player game. You could feel the MMO genetics there, but I think they really did a great job on like the actual combat, the set pieces, and that sort of like the boss battles, amazing. So they did a great job from a single player perspective, and I'm very, very excited for the future DLC of Final Fantasy 16, The Rising Tide, next year, to see what else that they can do. And I hope that they do more with the world as well, as much as they're kind of saying maybe not, but I really do hope that we get more out of that world for sure. But that brings our show to a close. Alan Wake 2 is our winner. Final Fantasy 16 is our runner-up there. Very, very close to being tied. I hope you have enjoyed my awards, my nominees, and my opinions, because they are my own opinions, and we will always have differing opinions. It'll be good if we have matching ones, but, you know, we all have unique interests and what appeals to us the most and what like makes us feel the best while playing these games. But again, a heartfelt thank you for watching my channel, for supporting my content, and for being here in this community. I value you all very much, and I try my best to also lead by an example, to have a very welcoming and enjoyable and positive space here. And you are all welcome here. So thank you so much for your support. It means a lot that I get to even do something so silly like this and celebrate it with all of you. I have stressed so hard on recording and putting this all together, so I hope everything comes together neatly. We'll find out when it's all edited and released and out there in the wild, and we're all watching this exact moment together, and then we'll understand, right? But thank you so much. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you have a great New Year season, and I will be back with more content on the channel and more playthroughs and a lot of new games soon to share with you. And I'm very excited to reveal what those will be in the coming months, naturally. So thank you so much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time.